welcome back to another video. Now today we're going to be breaking down the tactics that I used during the ITU Challenge Almere Long Course World Championships. And to get started, I thought the best thing to do was to demonstrate what the course actually looked like, and before I even went in the water, the things that I was thinking about. Now, very basic drawing of the course. You've got four main buoys to go around. You've got the two on the right, you've got one the furthest away, and then you've got the last one, which will then lead to either a second lap or into the transition. The red kind of dot and line shows the swim exit, and then you've got the start, which is the yellow similar thing, two dots and a line. It's not the best diagram, but it's a pretty good one to just illustrate the basic concept of what the course looked like. Now, this was a 2-lap course, and the first thing that I needed to worry about was the start. Now, on actual race day, we didn't know that this was going to be the start protocol, so it kind of shows that you do have to be on your toes always with events, especially swim starts, and where you're going to start from, because sometimes when you're doing recce's and that, they won't actually show you where this start is going to be until race day. Now, the difference from previous years was that we would start on the course and swim straight to the two buoys on the right. This time we had to swim onto the course, and then we could do the normal swim leg. So the course actually did a very good job of trying to keep the swim start fair. Now, because the first buoy that we needed to go around was a right-hand turn, typically if you start on the right side, you'd obviously have an advantage, but they did angle it slightly so that the left-handed side had a little bit of a distance advantage, whereas we had the better line advantage. So the right side and the left side were relatively even. However, it was still more advantageous to be on the right side. So that's just to deal with the start. The course itself is fairly straightforward, straight lines everywhere. The only thing to be aware of, which was something that we learned actually on race day, was going out to those first two buoys on the right. It was quite wavy, so you were going against some quite strong conditions which slowed you down, which when we go through this video we'll be demonstrating in a little bit more detail. But other than that, it's a relatively simple course, and it's two laps. Okay, so this is the start. So like I said, we're looking on reverse of what we were looking at on the diagram. However, the right-sided buoy is the one that is showing, and I'm second most in. So I'm 2 in from this. Now, I paused the video here because you can see that I actually look across here. So I'm that second one in, and I'm actually looking across to the left-handed side because, as I said at the start of the video, the right side was still more beneficial, and I was looking to see where the left side, which again, you can see here, there's less people and less problem. It was going to be less problematic start because there was less people at this side. So I was actually thinking last minute, should I move to the left-hand side? However, the countdown started and we were going, so I just had committed at that point. But if you want to look at my tactics video, you can find on Zen 8 Coaching. I always like to start as close as I can to either the right or the left buoys, so I was still in a relatively good position. The tactic for the start was basically get to that first buoy first, or as high up as I could, because I wanted that clean water, and I also wanted to push on the pace for anyone that's a strong biker that may be not known as a swimmer. So you can see here everyone pretty much had the same idea, get to the buoy first. There were some really strong threats in this race, so it was all about trying to stretch out that field, and one of the quickest ways to stretch out the field is by not letting people sit on your feet. So going out hard, stretching that field apart and letting the cracks form very early, because if you try and do that later on in the race, you've already helped them get to that part in the race, so you've helped them go further enough. So I got to the buoy here first, which is the right side was the most advantageous, but it also meant that I was having to jostle a little bit for position. So pros and cons there, it could have been a very different story. And now you can start to see the waves hitting me. Now I'm dipping my head quite a lot here. It's been amplified by the waves because I do have this kind of I kind of throw my arm and I dip my head a little bit, but with the waves, it made me look a lot worse than what I normally am. So As you can see here, I'm just setting as strong pace as I can. There are faster swimmers in this event, but I wanted to just pull away as much as I could to try and again split up that group to try and make basically the strong bikers become isolated and trying to remove some of the threats that their whole race is basically trying to make it through the swim without losing too much time, so that they couldn't then just come through at the back end of the race. So we're going into the waves here, and straight away people are sitting on feet, which is fine for me at the moment. Okay, yes, I'm helping them, but I'm not too bothered because, like I said, I wanted to stretch this field up straight away, and setting a fast pace was the only way to do this. So it just became basically a pace line to that second boy or those two boys on the right. So I was just trying to push there, and you can see very quickly everyone's gone into a line. And I probably was, because this was one of the things that I maybe not been aware of, was how wavy it actually was going out. It doesn't look too bad, but when we were swimming, I don't know if it was a current or waves or whatever, but it was making it very difficult for me. So everyone, I think, is straight in, and I was probably maybe one of the slower to react to that. So got to these first two on the right hand side, nice and fine. You can see there's a big line behind me, so I'm basically probably at this point doing too much work. So I really need to get off the front of this group. So like I said, I wanted to get off the front of this group. So I'm actually pulling really wide here on the right. And this is just to get a bit of a grip on what's going on with the race. Because when you're actually swimming, it's very difficult to know what you're doing and what the impacts are having. So I pulled over to the right, and there was two reasons for this. One was to have a look at what was happening on. And the second was to basically make someone else come through and pull. Unfortunately, one of the problems with this is when you have a pace that's set very high and you pull off the front, it can take some time for whoever wants to take on that pace to come through. So it was kind of getting to this point where no one really wanted to pull to the front, and I then again just went back into that pack and tried to pull it more, because all of that work that I'd done to make a big long pace line had basically, if we did just tapped on the brakes, everyone would have then just clumped back up into a big group. So again, I went straight back on the front and carried on pulling. I kind of just, the risk of pulling some swimmers along was not the same as risking keeping some of the big bike and runners in the group. So, and to be honest, to some extent, I don't mind pulling along people in the swim because I like a bit of help on the bike. So if I can get a good pack of solid swimmers, then that's beneficial to me. But again, I only wanted a small group because I don't want to just pull everyone along. So I went back on the front, and this is arguably a decision that maybe not been the greatest of things, because I can tell you now, I put quite a lot of energy into this first bit of the swim. And you'll see in the later parts of the swimming video, I'm actually then for the remainder of as I'm sitting in. But I was happy to do the work here just to try and again make that field, make sure that it doesn't string up, and to make sure that I wasn't letting anyone lose the pace and then make it very easy to stay in one big group. So this is where someone actually takes over the pace, and you can see during this period again with that looking around, someone wanting to take through. It has clumped up a little bit, and now the pace is being injected again. So the first part of the swim was quite surgy. This is a little bit later into the race. We had a group of 5. Now, I don't know why this happened, but basically you can see in the distance there's some red buoys, and that they've done a line, because they're quite far apart, the boys. They've done a line to make it so that you could swim basically in a straight line, and we pulled over really to the right. Now, I did try and come off this group and go for the quickest line, and I thought, well, you know, if I can swim the same pace but do a better line, I'll gain an advantage. However, every time I did that, or when I did that, I found that I was not swimming as quick as the pace. So it was one of two reasons. Either me swimming a good line was slower than sitting in this pace line, or taking more effort than this pace line, or the person leading this group actually knew something about the water which I may have not seen. It could have been a current, it could have been anything like that. Okay, so I've just paused it here, and this is because we're coming onto we've just gone around the last buoy to conclude our lap, and we're basically starting that second lap. Now, you can see the person that was leading the group has now just looked behind to see what's going on with the group. So probably for two reasons. First is, like I've just said, to see what's going on with the group. The second, and this was something that I put at the start of what I've said at the start of the video, there was some sort, I don't know if it was the current, but it was definitely wavy, and it was very difficult on this home straight to be at the front because you were taking on an awful lot of resistance, and it was really hard to be on. So we can see immediately here, the guy that's just been leading the back leg has now looking up and is wanting someone to overtake that lead so that he's not working hard in the actual swim. So he's done his bit of pulling, and now he's come off at a very good point to let someone now take on the work, but it'd be harder. So in this respect, it's probably easier to think of it like he's just done his turn as normal, and now someone is going to overtake him to take their turn, but they're going into a headwind. So it's a lot more beneficial to sit behind that person because you're going to get a lot more of them breaking it up, and you're going to save a lot more behind them. So this was very clever from this swimmer in red. And I don't know who this is, but he had a red hat, so it's probably someone that they were looking at for media. So it's obviously someone that's very experienced, that knows what they're doing. So that's why I paused it here, because he's had a little look, and we can see he's looking around quite a bit. So we've now got our new leader. Like I said, very clever, very smart by the person in the red hat. They're letting them sit, and I'm fourth back. So you've got the lead swimmer, that's Pablo, you've got two swimmers, and then I'm behind those. And I just basically found it, this was just basically where I was in the race, and I was quite happy sitting behind here. So I'm number 8, sat in this group of 3. So I'm just chilling at the back here, and because I've got 2 people in front of me, you know, they're disrupting quite a lot of water in front of me, so it's very easy to just sit in. And I basically sat in this same position for the rest of the second lap. Like I said, I'd done quite a lot of work on that first lap, setting the initial pace, and I was quite happy to sit in and now not do anything, partly to recover because of the effort, but partly because the pace was really fast, so I didn't need to do anything. So the guy in the red hat is now more or less back at the start of the race, and he's now really pulling. So he's let someone do the hard work into that wavy condition. He's rested up, and now he's going again. And that's why you can see it's all strung out. And this just shows, again, very strung out. And I don't know what the plan was, but I'm assuming that this swimmer wanted to reduce this group down further. Now, when I was swimming in this group, I actually thought it was a lot bigger than it actually was. And it can be very difficult sometimes, especially when the pace is on, to really understand where you're at, because it becomes a sort of just put your head down and stick in as best you can. So I thought it was a lot bigger than what it was. But the person at the front is just drilling on the pace, and it was just, for me, it was just sitting in the group and trying to conserve as much energy as possible, because on my own I wasn't going to be swimming faster than this pace that was set, so I might as well sit in and use the work off of this guy that's leading the swim. Okay, so we're going around the last buoy now, and the pace is still full on. You can see that it's still one big line, and the guy at the front is really drilling it. Now, I think there is, the reason he's doing this is because there's 2 real reasons. The first is you can drop anyone that's just hanging on to try and stay on part of the group, so you can really demoralize them by just them losing you with the last little bit when they may have been comfortable. But the second reason is because if you tire out everyone, and if you're a strong swimmer, and by initiating that pace a little bit more tires out people that are really strong on the bike, it means it's going to discourage anyone from attacking or making moves. So the option is that you're tiring them out enough in the swim that they get on the bike and they're not ready to put down their normal power, which means that if you're a strong swimmer and a slightly weaker biker, that you can keep up with them, or it can be fine. Or you may even drop them. But the other reason as well is when you're tired and when you're coming out of the swim tired, most people want to try and recover, so it discourages anyone from attacking. So you may have a good bike rider, and they're not going to be able to attack you because you've tired them enough in the swim that over that initial period, they're trying to recover from the swim effort. So it discourages any further attacks. This is also really important for someone that is a strong swimmer that may be worried about their bike, because most of the real big moves on the bike happen during key moments. So typically a swim to a bike, or if there's a particularly bit of a hill or a corner, but because Alma is relatively flat, and when you go later into long course events, the attacks become less because then people are setting up for the run. If you can neutralize that attack threat at the beginning of the bike, it's a lot less likely that someone is going to try that once the race is settled, because I always find that the swim, you know, the swim starts unsettled and then it settles into a rhythm, and then the bike start is unsettled and then it settles into a rhythm. So if you can kind of neutralize that threat on the unsettled part of the bike, which is that initial part where people are going to be attacking and surging all over the place, then it's a lot easier to sit in with strong riders and then also be able to kind of just form a group earlier on with people that may be better than you, if that may have just dropped you if you hadn't have put in that initial effort, who could have just ridden away from you. Thank you for watching this video of my breakdown of the tactics that I used during the Challenge Almere ITU Long Course Championships.